When I was young, my brother and I were often taken to visit my father's parents on summer vacation. My grandparents lived in a village located on the bank of the river. Just behind the last house in the village, the riverbed diverged. The river bifurcated into two parts. The right side of the river flowed towards the farmers' fields, the right side towards the forest. There was a small beach on the right side of the river that the local children loved. There was a legend in the village that once upon a time a mermaid lived in this very spot of the beach. We have heard the story of this mermaid many times from old people. A long time ago, when the canal was deep, there was a bridge on this spot, and one day a girl named Agatha went there to do laundry. Her little brother Mike was with her, and while Agatha was doing her laundry, Mike fell in the water. By the time Agatha noticed it, the current had already carried Mike far into the depths of the river. Agatha rushed into the water and tried to swim to her brother, but no matter how hard she tried, Mike was drifting faster and faster. It was clear he was about to drown. Then Agatha cried out to the river spirit, asking it to pick her up and let Mike go. As soon as Agatha shouted this, she disappeared beneath water before she could even wave her arms one last time, and Mike was almost immediately dragged ashore by an unknowing force. This was seen by the wives of several local farmers, who simultaneously ran to the river to help save Mike. Since then, it has been said that Agatha lives in the river. She became the wife of the spirit of the river and the mistress of the river itself. Sometimes it happened that people drowned in the river, even in calm weather. It was believed that it was Agatha who took them with her to the bottom of the river. Agatha did not like drunk and angry people. But she never touched children, on the contrary, she even protected them. Since Agatha became a mermaid, not a single child has drowned in that river. All the locals bravely let their children swim in the river, even those who did not believe the story of the mermaid. Many of us heard the quiet singing by the river. It was like a combination of wind and reed sounds, but you could still hear a quiet female voice in those sounds. The singing did not frighten us, we perceived it as something natural. The local boys loved to fish. They jokingly asked Agatha to toss them more fish, and oddly enough, the kids always had a full catch. The girls and I didn't fish with the boys. We liked to sit on the shore and have conversations in which we often mentioned Agatha. We imagined Agatha as a beautiful woman with long hair and a shirt embroidered with scales, like a fish. The girls and I also wove wreaths as gifts for Agatha and threw them into the water. We also believed that if we gave Agatha a mirror, we would have great luck in love. One day, when my friends and I were 10 years old, we were having fun on the porch of a house. Some local old ladies were sitting on a bench next to us, talking about different things. Suddenly they started talking about Agatha, and the old ladies said that Agatha had gotten older and wasn't the same person she used to be. She used to be a frequent hooligan, dragging the local tractor driver into the river, or the young shepherd. I was struck by the fact that a mermaid can age, too. When the old ladies began to go home, I pestered one of them and asked how it was possible that mermaids could grow old. The old woman told me that everything can grow old: trees, mountains, and even mermaids. Mermaids live in water, and if the river dried up, Agatha would die without water, too. I shared my discovery with my friends, and it fascinated us so much that we had a new game for the whole summer. We started having mermaid funerals. We would go out to the shore that was higher up from the river and pick any of us who could impersonate a mermaid. We would put a wreath on her head and give her a bouquet of flowers, and then roll the mermaid off the bank into the water. As the years went by, I grew up. The river dried up more and more. The last time I came to the village for my grandmother's funeral, my grandfather had died even earlier. The wake continued, and I, tired of the old man's talk, quietly left the house and walked to the bank of the river. The river was much smaller than before. I decided to weave a wreath, but as soon as I started to do it, I suddenly felt ashamed. I threw the unfinished wreath where the water used to flow, and went back into the house. There was an emptiness and dejection in my soul. A few more years passed, and quite by chance I stumbled across a vaguely familiar face on social media. It turned out to be Betty, one of my closest country friends, who I had played mermaid with as a child and later went to boyfriend meetings with. It turned out that Betty had recently moved to the town where I lived. We met up with her, got excited about each other, got to talking. I listened with interest to news of those I remembered as children, and in the midst of these endless memories, our river and the mermaid came up. I asked about the river, and Betty grew somber in response. She told me that a new farmer had come to the village and leased huge tracts of fields, and the farmer needed our river to irrigate them. He brought a bunch of bulldozers and backhoes to the river, dredged some, watered some, and then let the water back into the river, which was pretty dry. I was very surprised. Suddenly Betty asked me if I remembered and believed in the mermaid Agatha. I didn't know what to answer, since I didn't deny the existence of Agatha the mermaid. Betty began to tell me that after the river dried up, the mermaid Agatha died. But after the new farmer revived the river, Agatha was reborn, too, but different. She became evil incarnate. One day, in the shallowest part of the river, not far from the shore, a 10-year-old girl was dragged into the water. She was searched for a week, and then found right on the shore. The girl lay as if she had been put there on purpose. The children were no longer allowed near the river, but Agata couldn't stop. Animals and people were constantly drowning. Once a tractor flipped right into the water, and the driver drowned. The neighbor's girl, who was 13, also drowned. Even the new farmer's son accidentally slipped on the bank and fell into the water, though he could swim perfectly. The farmer, after his son's death, was as if he had lost his mind. He decided to pump the water out of the river to find his son's body. The farmer brought in the bulldozers again, and the water was drained. What they saw at the bottom of the river horrified everyone around them. At the bottom lay the bodies of all the people who had drowned. The bodies did not look decomposed. It was as if they had not died, even though many of them had drowned years before. Even the fish had not touched the bodies. Around the bodies lay a large number of mirrors. Later the process of burying the dead began. Agatha's body was also found at the bottom of the river. Her body, like all the others who drowned, had not decomposed. Agatha did not look like the mermaid from the fairy tales. She had no tail, she had normal human legs. Her eyes were open and her face contorted with horror, as if Agatha had seen something terrible before she died. The mermaid's body was at first wanted to be cremated, but the locals asked the local authorities to bury her. After the funeral, the riverbed was permanently covered with earth. The locals decided not to make the story public. They did not want journalists to investigate the unique case of undecomposed corpses underwater. Many witnesses to this story are still alive, but they do not talk about it, and now the story has become a common legend. But many of them remember that quiet singing of Agatha by the river.